All right, let's jump right in today. We're taking a deep dive into the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5. Specifically, two intertwined stories that happen right after Jesus and his disciples land in the region of the Gerasenes.
Oh, yeah. Right after they cross the Sea of Galilee. A lot going on in that chapter. Lots of vivid imagery.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And really get you thinking.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting, isn't it, how Mark places these two stories back to back?
Yeah, almost like he's setting up a deliberate contrast, right?
Exactly.
On one hand, you've got this really dramatic exorcism, a very raw display of power.
Yeah.
But then right after that, you get a story that's so much quieter and more intimate, a story about healing.
But both.
Yeah, but they both ultimately show Jesus' authority over, well, everything, really. Both the spiritual and the physical.
Yeah, okay, so let's start unpacking all this. The first story, the one with the Gerasene Demoniac.
Right.
I don't know about you, but it always leaves me kind of breathless.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Like you're just
the imagery alone.
Yeah, it's heavy. We're talking about a man who's living among the tombs, completely isolated,
Right.
Exhibits this superhuman strength, and he's so tormented that he's actually harming himself.
Yeah, it's a really powerful picture of suffering.
And chaos.
Oh, for sure, chaos. And don't forget that detail about him living among the tombs. That's significant.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, remember, in Jewish culture, tombs were considered unclean places.
Yeah.
So,
So he's not only physically and mentally afflicted, but
also ritually ostracized.
Mm-hmm.
An outsider, pushed away from everyone else.
Yeah. You know what really gets me every time is that even in that state, this guy's really going through it.
Right.
He immediately recognizes Jesus' divine power.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he calls him Son of the Most High God.
It's remarkable, isn't it? When you consider just how much turmoil this man is clearly in.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be...
focused on other things.
Yeah, exactly.
It really speaks to this undeniable presence of Jesus. It's like even the demonic forces inside of this man can't help but acknowledge who Jesus is.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's that whole chilling detail about the demon's name,
Legion.
Legion, for we are many. Always sends shivers down my spine.
It really makes you wonder about the nature of suffering, doesn't it?
How so?
I don't know, maybe this legion inside him represents something more than just demonic possession. Could it be like a metaphor or something? For like the different facets of human pain? The physical, the emotional, the social isolation?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Makes you think about all the different levels of suffering, doesn't it? And how we approach it.
Yeah, are we seeing the whole picture? Or are we just seeing like
just one little piece of it?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, you have the exorcism itself.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's not exactly a subtle event. Mm-hmm. We've got the demons begging to be sent into a herd of pigs.
The pigs that...
Well, they stampede right into the lake and drown themselves.
Right.
Talk about chaos.
It's almost like...
almost like a visual representation.
Yeah, of the evil being purged.
Right, and it's all directed outward. Away from the man.
And then, bam, we see this total transformation.
The man is suddenly clothed, calm, just sitting there at Jesus' feet.
It's like, yeah,
his humanity has been restored. It's really a beautiful image.
And it's not just about the clothes, right? It's about being clothed and in his right mind.
Right. Clothing as a sign of dignity, sanity as a sign of order.
Yeah. And that's what's so powerful.
And what does Jesus tell him to do?
He tells him to stay and share his story. He doesn't just heal him and move on,
That's important.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, your story matters.
Right, your experience has power. Use it.
It's like he's starting a ripple effect. Starting with one man who used to be...
Well, an outcast. Someone who was lost and alone.
And it does spread, doesn't it? The man goes all over the region of the Decapolis.
10 cities.
10 cities, yeah. Known for their Roman influence.
Right. Not exactly a Jewish stronghold.
Yeah, and he's proclaiming what Jesus did for him. It's almost like this bridge is being built between...
Yeah, between two very different cultures. Like a hint that...
That Jesus' message is meant for everyone.
Exactly. It's not limited by geography or culture. It's universal.
Okay, so we have this incredible story of liberation, of a man being set free from the legion inside him.
Right,
and then Mark doesn't even give us time to
to catch our breath?
Yeah, exactly. We're right back by the sea, and the drama's ramping up.
Oh, it's a masterful transition, the way he weaves these stories together.
It really is, yeah.
And this next story, well, this one introduces us to Jairus.
The synagogue leader, right?
Yeah. A man of status, authority.
But here he is.
Desperate to save his daughter, his dying daughter.
He throws himself at Jesus' feet. Doesn't care who sees.
It's a picture of humility, isn't it?
Yeah.
A father willing to do anything for his child.
It really shows you that fear and desperation, it can level everyone. Doesn't matter who you are.
It's a great equalizer.
Yeah.
And, it's right in the middle of this scene, this very urgent scene, that another story emerges. Like a story within a story.
Yeah, the woman who had been bleeding.
For 12 years.
For 12 years. Can you imagine?
It's hard to even fathom, isn't it? The physical toll, the emotional toll, and the social isolation. Imagine being considered unclean, unable to participate in your community.
Just like that demoniac kind of?
Yeah. Both of them pushed to the margins, but for different reasons. It's heartbreaking.
But then she hears about Jesus, right?
And something inside her just, it ignites.
She pushes through the crowd, thinking, if I can just touch his clothes, I'll be healed.
There's so much desperation there, and yet also so much faith. It's this amazing act of defiance.
It's like she's saying,
I'm not going to let my condition define me. I'm not going to let fear control me.
And she's right, The
moment she touches Jesus' cloak, the bleeding stops.
It's incredible. Like the power of belief just
takes over. And then here's the really interesting part. Jesus, he knows.
Even though there are all these people around?
He stops and asks, who touched me?
It's like he wants to acknowledge her faith.
He's not satisfied with just performing the miracle.
No.
He wants to connect with the person behind it.
It shows his compassion, doesn't it?
This incredible desire to see those who are often overlooked and marginalized. And so the woman, she's scared.
But she's also grateful.
Right.
Yeah?
And so she comes forward and admits what she did. And Jesus calls her daughter.
What does that tell us?
I think it's about restoring her dignity. Reminding her that she belongs. She's not an outcast.
And that true healing is about more than just...
Right. It's not just about the body.
It's about the whole person. But as we know...
The story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. Because just then...
someone arrives from Jairus' house with news.
Devastating news.
His daughter has died. Just like that. All that hope.
It just vanishes.
And the people around Jairus, they start to question everything. Like, what's the point? Why bother Jesus now?
But Jesus, he turns to Jairus and says...
Do not be afraid. Just believe.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's like the essence of faith right there.
Right. Hold on to hope even when everything seems lost.
Because true faith, it's not about just believing in something.
It's about believing even when.
Even when everything around you is telling you not to. So there we have it. 2 stories, 2 very different challenges.
2 very different journeys.
Yeah.
But both unfolding at the same time. And it's here, at this point, that things get really interesting.
It's almost like these 2 stories, the demoniac and Jairus' daughter, they're like mirror images of each other.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, you've got someone considered an outsider in both. A demoniac, literally living in the tombs.
Right.
Isolated.
Right.
And then you have Jairus' daughter, maybe not an outcast in the same way.
But she's facing a kind of social death, right? Because of her illness.
Exactly.
She's become untouchable.
Untouchable, separated.
Yeah. So both experiencing a kind of isolation. Separation from the community.
And what does Jesus do?
He steps right into that space.
Yeah, he bridges that gap.
Between the marginalized and everyone else. It's like
he's intentionally blurring the lines,
Showing us that compassion doesn't have boundaries.
He's not afraid to be around these people.
People who are considered
unclean, untouchable.
Right. In fact, it's like he's drawn to them.
Which brings us back to where these stories take place. Mark is very deliberate about this.
Oh, yeah. Putting these events on the other side of the Sea of Galilee.
In the region of the Gerasenes. Why is that so important?
Well, the other side, it represents something...
What?
Gentile territory. It's outside of Jewish influence.
So, Jesus is venturing out into unfamiliar territory.
A place where Jewish laws and customs, well, they might not be so welcome.
And it's here... in this foreign land that he encounters these people.
These people who are already considered outsiders.
Even within their own culture.
Right. And I think Mark is doing something interesting here. He's setting up this kind of challenge for the reader.
To think about
how we respond to people who are different. People who don't fit in.
Don't fit our ideas of who deserves compassion.
Exactly. And, the reactions we see from the people in this region.
They're telling.
Very telling. I mean, think about the Gerasenes.
Yeah. After the exorcism.
After they see the pigs run into the lake.
They freak out.
They beg Jesus to leave.
Like they're afraid of him.
Yeah, like their fear is bigger than their gratitude.
It's like the opposite of how Jairus reacts.
Right. Jairus humbles himself, pleads for help, doesn't care about the cultural differences. He's willing to risk everything to save his daughter.
Yes.
And speaking of boldness.
The woman with the hemorrhage, That took guts.
12 years she endured this horrible condition.
Probably facing shame, rejection.
Almost likely. But then she hears about Jesus. And it's like something changes inside her.
Just clicks.
It really is a beautiful example of how desperation can sometimes lead to the most profound faith.
Yeah.
You know?
Because she doesn't care about what other people think. She just wants to be healed.
Right. Her need is stronger than her fear.
And it pays off.
The moment she touches Jesus, boom, she's healed.
It's proof that sometimes all it takes is a little bit of hope.
That willingness to reach out.
Touch something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. Makes you wonder what impossible situations in our own lives might need a similar leap of faith.
What are we holding on to out of fear that might actually be holding us back
from experiencing true healing?
Okay, but back to Jairus. He gets the news. His daughter is dead.
It's crushing.
But Jesus, he just turns to Jairus and says, do not be afraid. Just believe. It's powerful. A command, but also
an invitation.
Yeah, an invitation to trust in something beyond ourselves.
And to remember that faith isn't always about having all the answers. It's about choosing to believe even when we don't understand.
Especially when things seem hopeless.
Right.
So they arrive at the house. Jesus, Jairus, some disciples.
And it's total chaos. People crying, wailing.
But Jesus says something interesting. He tells them that the girl, she's not dead.
She's just slipping.
Which, you know, you can imagine how that went over.
They probably thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
No, she's dead.
Yeah. But Jesus, he doesn't let that stop him. He takes the girl's parents and the disciples into the room.
Where she's lying.
And then he takes her hand and says, Talitha kum. It means, little girl, I say you get up.
In Aramaic.
And she's alive! It's like the power of his words.
It defies logic. He has authority over death itself.
It's a reminder that even when we think something's irreversible,
it's not always the case.
Yeah, there's always a chance for
resurrection, for new life.
And not just physically, but also like
hope being restored, broken hearts mended.
So we have these two stories. They seem different on the surface, but they're so connected.
And they both end with this instruction for silence.
Oh, that's a good point. How come?
Well, some scholars think that Jesus, he didn't want to create a big spectacle. Like something that would overshadow the real message.
The message of faith.
Right. It's like he's emphasizing the personal nature of these encounters.
He doesn't want to make it this big public display of power. It's more about
the inward change.
Yeah.
The shift in perspective.
The deepening of faith.
Exactly. A message that's still relevant today, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, we live in a world that's all about appearances, but real change.
It happens on a much deeper level.
You know, we haven't really talked about
what is that?
How Mark presents these stories.
Okay.
It's not just about these miraculous events. It's like he's exploring different forms of power. It's like on one hand you have Jesus with this raw power over demons, nature, even death.
Yeah, power that could be, well, dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands.
For sure, but then you see these quieter moments when it's someone's faith that kind of activates things.
Like he's meeting them halfway.
Exactly. So maybe Mark is contrasting these two ideas of power, the power to command and control.
Versus the power that comes from empathy, you know, and surrender.
Yeah, and that maybe real power, true power, isn't about forcing people to do things. It's about empowering them.
Helping them to see their own worth and dignity, especially those whose society has rejected.
It makes you think about how we see power in our own lives. Are we trying to control everything, or are we trying to lift each other up?
Big question, right?
Yeah.
Especially in a world where power is often seen as, well, status and wealth.
Yeah, and getting your own way.
But these stories, they make us think about a different kind of power, one that's more about compassion, about service.
And even though Jesus has all this power, he doesn't always use it the way we'd expect. Like with the Gerasenes.
That's right, they beg him to leave. They're afraid of what his power might mean.
Afraid of change.
And they miss out. They miss out on the chance for something truly amazing.
It's like sometimes we have to step outside our comfort zones to experience the biggest miracles.
Maybe we're all resisting things that could actually heal us, you know?
Clinging to the old ways. Like we're building our own tombs.
Yeah, just like that demoniac. Isolating ourselves from the very thing that could set us free.
But the good news is, it's never too late to break out of those tombs.
To choose faith over fear.
And these stories from Mark give us a glimpse of what's possible.
Both for ourselves and for the community as a whole.
So as we finish up our deep dive today, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
I think it's the reminder that true power, it's not about control. It's about love.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing that everyone has something sacred inside them.
Even the outcasts. Even the ones we've rejected.
Exactly.
Beautifully said. And for our listeners out there, remember the words Jesus spoke to Jairus. Do not be afraid. Just believe. Let those words guide you. Let them open your heart to new possibilities. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and until next time, keep diving deep.